Welcome back to The Health Hunt, a human, humble, and humorous exploration of how to level up your health. If you're one of our regular listeners, you may have noticed we've been a little quiet lately. We took a short break over the summer to recharge, keep up with work, and most importantly, because Dan recently underwent spinal surgery. Now, the good news is he's recovering well. And over the next 2 episodes, he's going to take us through the entire experience, from the first symptom that changed everything, to making the difficult decision to have surgery, to what recovery has really been like. We also wanted to let you know that through the rest of the summer, our release schedule will be a little bit more intermittent as we balance his recovery, work, and summer travel schedules. Maybe Mexico Sandy will share some stories, or what happens in Mexico stays in Mexico. We don't know yet. So make sure you're following the podcast so you'll be notified whenever a new episode drops. Today's episode is really about the decision. Dan explains how a subtle change in the way he walked led to new MRIs, consultations with multiple specialists, and ultimately a diagnosis of severe spinal cord compression. He'll also break down some of the confusing medical terminology from his MRI report and explain how he decided that surgery was the right path forward. If you've ever faced a difficult medical decision or know someone who has, we hope this conversation helps you feel more informed and more empowered to advocate for your own health. But this is Dan's personal journey, so we need to remind you that the Health Hunt podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are not medical professionals, and nothing shared should be considered medical advice. As always, consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your health. All right, now let's get into it.
I do kind of feel like I could be in the medical field for what I've just been through for the last couple of weeks, but the disclaimer does hold. So I revert to the disclaimer. But yeah, if you would have told me a couple months ago that I would have had surgery in July, I kind of would have thought you were kidding. And so the real question is how did I get here? Like what just happened? And so let me rewind. And for people that have listened to some of our prior podcasts, I'll reference episode 2 and 5. I've probably mentioned, I did mention my symptoms for my neck. And let's also rewind to 2019. These symptoms is when these symptoms started to form. I was living in Los Angeles. The symptoms came in by way of intermittent balance issues, like not like room spinning, but just like not feeling like you're walking, like your equilibrium's off. Muscle guarding. Muscle guarding is interesting. It's muscles such as the traps, levator scapulae, suboccipitals. These are all muscles in like your shoulders area and back of your head. All of them get really tight because they're muscle guarding. They are protecting your spine when it's your body's reaction to what is issues going on in your cervical neck area. Another thing that I should note, and I've mentioned this before, but I had no classic arm pain. I had no numbness, sciatica, nothing of that sort. So it wasn't pain. I was functioning fine, but I was constantly on this like Groundhog's Day of come home at 5:00, get the neck massage out, deep neck massage with like the this Amazon thing that I bought that did a really good job.
Yeah, what are those things that like pummels into your neck?
Yeah.
It always suggests those for gifts for me.
Yeah. And so great. Like I would like literally like it'd be like heaven every day. And I just, this was it. This was how I was going to be living. And I remember when I was talking to my primary care physician while in Miami, maybe a couple of years ago, and we were going over my neck symptoms. He said to me something that really resonated that kind of hits two things. The first is that he said, if your symptoms change, if something new is presented, then look further into this. As long as you're not falling or there's not a new symptom that is, concerning. He's like, you're managing your symptoms. We're not running to, a surgeon and so on and so forth. And so I think the bigger picture is to understand that you need to be in touch with your body, like recognize how it's behaving day in and day out. And because it's talking to you. And so that stuck with me. And I'm really glad that I did, because in February of this year,
I have a question, because So what was your level of pain or discomfort? Because that's sometimes a benchmark for people. Is it interfering with, you said you'd come home and give yourself a massage, but was it interfering with daily life? Was it something you were sort of always cognizant of? Can you maybe walk people through that a little bit?
So pain, like when I go to all these doctors or I talk to people, it's like, they're always like pain. And pain is not what I've experienced. Discomfort's a better word.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just kind of like over the course of a day, I'm sitting in a chair or like, maybe it's my posture or just how, whatever I'm doing. And my muscles just, they guard and they just get all coiled. And so I come home and it's just I'm just all coiled up. And so I need to release all of this kind of pent up muscular tightness. And there's a reason for that, but, there could be multiple reasons for that, but there's certainly a clinical and like infrastructural body reason for that. And so every day was just about making sure that those were loose. And so it was constant discomfort that I grew accustomed to that didn't necessarily affect, I don't want to say obviously affected the quality of my life, but didn't affect I wasn't like in pain or like dreading every day. I just knew that I had to go home and like release.
Yeah. But it didn't affect you because for me, I just want, with chronic pain, it's affected me in a way where I worry about doing things. How am I going to feel? Maybe I shouldn't do that. Did you ever experience any of that, or it really wasn't to that level?
I was mindful of that. I'm very in touch with my body. So like if it was like a day I'm playing tennis and I felt a little bit this or that, I either wouldn't go or I'd limit kind of my mobility during, I would hit balls, but I wouldn't go chasing after balls. I wouldn't lift heavy weights anymore. I lift, but I was mindful of that. I wouldn't be biking. There's things I just didn't know that would aggravate my body. So February this year, I'm just walking in the gym and I honestly can't figure out what the exact moment was, but I noticed that my right foot gait from the ankle to the toes started to kick out on the right side. So it was flaring out. And it was a little bit noticeable, but if I kept walking, it went away. And I'd still run at that point. I was still running. And then just weeks later, probably March, got a little bit more severe. And it would just kind of make my foot and right leg really tired. And it would tighten up and the symptoms would present in the calf and the front of my ankle. And it would just tighten up. And so I just had to stop. It wasn't like I was going to fall or I think limping is a strong word, but I could walk probably 50 to 100 feet at that time, and then my leg would be tired and I'd have to stop.
Interesting. I mean, the way you're describing it, first of all, I'm trying to picture it. I wish I'd actually seen it, but you're just walking along and your legs kicking out, or you noticed that there was something you noticed that you were walking weird? Because again, for me, I have knee and hip and things, and so I'm aware that I have to walk to compensate a certain way, or I might limp, but that's in relation to an actual pain. You noticed a weird gait before you noticed the discomfort? Interesting sequence.
It kind of happened all together.
Okay.
So I think the calf would get tight and the ankle would get tight and then the gait would kick out. It was the body's response to that tightness.
Yeah.
And that tightness was happening for something probably, and we'll talk about that later, but it was a symptom. It was something. And I waited it was another 2 to 4 weeks. It wasn't getting any better. And so I went to a orthopedic doctor who was not a surgeon, but just a general orthopedic doctor. And he said we should get a lumbar and a neck MRI. And I get these pretty regularly, every once or two year or two. And so I knew that I had neck issues. And I knew that, my lumbar was not horrible, but that of a 40-something-year-old guy. And so, but we did these, and with MRI results, I got mine back before I had the appointment to review it with him. I'm sure people that are listening will know that you can go check your test results. You'll read all this medical jargon, and your appointment's 6 days away or something, and you're let's just get to the appointment already. You can't get there because it's just whatever. And so, I started to read this thing, and so I wanted to introduce some terms that I was seeing and we were talking about, and let's kind of go over those things.
I just have another question too.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt you. So this is actually, this MRI that you just had is after we had the pre-nuvo full body scans, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, because I just wanted to reiterate, this is kind of like where those scans sort of only can show you so much. So you need a more specialized, localized scan to get to the root of maybe what's going on.
So that's a good point. So the scan definitely picked this up. It definitely said I have issues.
Yeah.
It's a C6, C7. The prenovo scan did its job. But as I mentioned in the prenovo episodes, those are surveillance MRIs. And if you have a surveillance MRI, it's like, okay, here's the deal. Now you need to go with a diagnostic MRI to kind of narrow down what's really going on. And these are diagnostic MRIs that I've had. So these are just terms. I'm going to use these throughout the podcast, and people probably know these, but let's just kind of sort them all out. And I think it's useful to just talk through them a little bit. Now it applies to me. So osteophytes. This is a word I might have heard before. And I think I primarily use this word, or I'd had these words in discussions as bone spurs. People always talk about bone spurs. Same thing as osteophytes. Osteophytes maybe is the medical term for that. Osteophytes grow as your spine ages, and it's your body's reaction to stabilizing the nerves in the spinal cord. It's your body's attempt to enforce a weak spot. And over time, this extra bone that hopes to make the joint stronger actually could bulge or protrude into your actual spinal cord. So osteophytes are something that if you have issues with your spine, aka bone spur, your doctor would definitely mention that, and you would see it on MRI radiology report. So bones growing, your body does this in defense of itself, but it actually can wind up hurting you as well. Herniated disc, everyone knows this, common medical term. Part of the disc pushes outward and presses on nearby nerves of the spinal cord. Anyone who's had back issues or neck issues probably has some type of herniation going on. And the truth of the matter is, and Sandy knows this too, is that probably everyone has herniations, and they're just not symptomatic.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you mentioned that, because
So it's all about being symptomatic or not. But you probably had disc herniations if you've never had an MRI. Spinal stenosis. Stenosis is the narrowing, and so it's the narrowing of the spine, and so that's a medical term of spinal stenosis. Spinal canal. So this is kind of interesting. So a healthy cervical canal is 15 to 17 millimeters. That's millimeters wide, obviously. And if you have an MRI where it starts to show that your spinal cord is less than 10 millimeters, it's kind of a watch zone. And mine, the most recent MRI, was just above 6. So let me give the analogy here. Imagine a tunnel that normally has plenty of room for a train. And over time, the wall thickens, maybe debris protrudes into that tunnel. The train isn't being squeezed. The train's still going through the tunnel, but the walls are starting to touch each other. It's being squeezed. There's much less room for that train in the tunnel. And that's what's happening here, is that your spinal cord is narrowing. So the passageway for the nerves and everything is just becoming narrow and more narrow. It becomes dangerous at the 6 millimeter level where I was at. Becoming really dangerous, meaning, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, meaning, I don't want to say I was a ticking time bomb, but I think it would be fair to say that I could have substantial medical issues if I was to get into a car accident or fall.
So yes, it's sort of there waiting to happen, and something could trigger it to become worse. And not to try and sound cool, but I also I was diagnosed with severe spinal stenosis. So we've joked about, in order to be on the health hunt, you have to have a diagnosis somewhere in your life, spinal stenosis. And also, sort of back on the mind-body topic, as we're discussing it and as you're describing the narrowing of all the things, my back is really bugging me right now. I don't know what C number or anything it is, but it's my lower back. But again, because we're talking about it, my back is bugging me. So thanks.
I totally get that. And that actually does make sense. If you're talking about it, your body's thinking about it, and then boom. Spinal cord compression, I just talked about that. It's your cord's being compressed. That's obvious. Cervical myelopathy. And this is one of those medical terms that you'll always see on these kind of doctors talking about. It's spinal cord dysfunction. Just another word for that. So my MRI summary was severe C6-7 degeneration. I had a large bone spur, the osteophyte disc complex. I had a herniated disc. I had significant spinal cord compression to C67, and I mentioned that was 6 millimeters. So this does not add up to a good MRI. There are people in this world, not to sound like a broken record, that have an MRI like this or worse that have no symptoms, that are walking around, their life is fine. That's dangerous. I've hoped, that sometimes they can be proactive and get an MRI to know what this is all about, because this is pretty bad stuff. But, obviously just through all of my medical adventures, I was just monitoring this and well aware of this. But this is kind of like the final result of what okay, it's time to start talking to other people, surgeons and so forth. So at the end of my MRI report, the radiologist said I should consult a neurosurgeon. And so when I met with my orthopedic doctor that I mentioned before, he, said, and this is why, so orthopedic doctors that are non-surgical orthopedic doctors, like they do a lot of things, and they're kind of gatekeepers in a way. It's no disrespect to them. They obviously are smart and they have practices for reasons, but they look at an MRI and they know that's, hey, it's time to, I'm not going to do anything here. We're going to get you to a neurosurgeon before I start doing anything. It's physical therapy, pain management, injections, whatever. So I'm not touching this until you talk to a neurosurgeon. That was the long and the short of what he had told me, and rightfully so. One of the things that's important about having doctors, it may be the most valuable thing, if they aren't even a good doctor, is that they know people. And so my doctor, as we were in our appointment, said, listen, he's like, I'm going to text a neurosurgeon I'm not giving names here, at a so-and-so hospital. And I know he's, booked out, but we're going to get you in.
You want a doctor with connection, like friends.
Yeah.
Like
and so I got in a couple weeks where the schedule wasn't even available. There was nothing available at all. And as I had mentioned before, and I'll kind of say again, I didn't get one neurologist opinion. I got 3.
So this is the thing I love about Dan and why this podcast is fun to do. I don't know anyone else that's done that, things like that. And it's so interesting. It really takes, and I know you're going to get into this, but the amount of time that it takes to sort of find the doctors and go to the appointments and then take it's quite an interesting thing. So I'm excited that you're going to talk about that today.
Yeah. Listen, what's the best way to put this? If you have plantar fasciitis or something, which I've had, and some doctors like, you have plantar fasciitis. You probably don't need to go get 3 opinions on that. But this is, Dan, are you going to have spine surgery?
Yeah. It's not,
and so
no big deal.
Yeah. And so I was like, I probably would have gotten more, but I felt, because there were some through lines, that I had enough information, and I'll explain that right now. So top line, I saw, following the visit with the doctor that my orthopedic had recommended, I slid in, I kind of finagled my way in to see another doctor that was down in Fort Lauderdale on a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Something opened up. I just went. He spent an hour and a half with me, and I'll talk about that, but we went through the MRI, showed me, measured my millimeters. He went through all of the images with me. It was fascinating. And then I drove 2 hours away to a hospital in Pembroke Pines to meet another one. And so what I'm telling you guys is that, and of course people, have lives, and is that this is your body. And I just was going to do anything for myself, to have the best information. So let's talk about what they all agreed on. That my MRI is severe, that there is cord compression that is present. And this won't improve on its own. It's not getting any better. It's degenerative. And if I do pursue surgery, it's going to be something called an ACDF, which I'll talk about in this podcast. And so that was kind of, they all agreed there, is that at some point I'm going to probably need the surgery, and that I have symptoms that necessitate likely having that surgery sooner than later. But there was kind of a difference in approach and the timing of that. And so the doctor that I saw originally walked in, and he had looked at my MRIs. He said, you need ACDF of C67. That leg kick you have that I mentioned before is a abnormal symptom of your neck, I believe. And I think he went as far as, I think I maybe told you this, Sandy, I think he went as far as to say, I don't know if it'll ever get better.
Meaning after surgery or?
Right. Just after, like, let's just hope we can stop the progression.
Well, I think that's a common thread with anything on the back surgery is that they don't give you, I mean, just in my experience from what I've heard and from my own experience, they don't give you a hugely strong prognosis of what you're going to feel like after the surgery.
Right.
Which makes the decision difficult.
Right. Kind of, this is my opinion. This is not medical. This is just through my research and everything, is that I think these doctors quote like very conservative.
Yes.
Almost like doomsday, even though it's not doomsday, type of like prognosis for you. Because it's a kind of a general prognosis. Like, I think if you're young, if you're in good shape and you're active and you have a bunch of different good things going on for you, I think you have chances of having success. I think if you're 75 years old, the outcome could be a bit different. I mean, I think that's logical to say.
Yeah, for any surgery, but yeah.
So if you're given, like, they're going to give you numbers, and I think those numbers are just like very average. I don't think they really go into the weeds of like, hey, you're younger, you're this, you're that, like you're a bit different. Like you could have a better chance of success. So the second doctor I saw had an incredible bedside manner. Like I saw him out in Pembroke Pines, just super nice guy. Was just so answered all my questions. He didn't think I needed surgery now. And he also didn't think that my leg had anything to do with my neck.
So that would stress me out. I'm curious to know how you felt about that, because that's two very different responses.
I felt like I needed to see a third.
Yeah. You need a tiebreaker.
Yeah. And the third was kind of a tiebreaker, but not really. He said that he also didn't think my leg had to do with my neck. He wasn't sure, but he thought that it would be very difficult for that to be the case because, and I'll explain this again, this is paraphrasing his words, is you don't have neck issues that skip your upper body and go right to your leg. Meaning I had no pain in my neck, in my arms. I have no upper body symptoms. So it just doesn't shoot down to your leg and skip anything. And you're hurting. Like, he's never seen that before, And so it doesn't mean that it's not possible, but it's just very unlikely. But he did say that I should get this surgery in the next 3 to 6 months. Because he did use the word ticking time.
Okay. Because you handled it well, because I know we've talked about this, but I think I would have been in a tailspin with 3 different opinions. I guess there's some consensus and agreement, but everybody has a slightly different opinion. I think that's a good lesson sort of for the audience to take away, is that you try and get as much information as you can, but it's not always going to give you a definitive answer.
So true. And so the part that like I had to layer out and kind of suss out and like understand is that whether or not, and the issue is that my leg was bothering me. I couldn't walk more than like 3 to 5 minutes without stopping. Probably even less than that.
So then it's really impacting your day-to-day quality of life. And right. I can understand that.
And so I wanted to fix this leg thing. And one of the possibilities, if I got this surgery, that it would help it. And so if I didn't get that surgery, I didn't check that box. I wasn't doing all of the things, as you say, Sandy, that one would do to see how I can improve the leg. And so if I would have done all of these other things and not done the surgery and the leg never got better, well, I didn't do the ACDF. So let's start there. Plus, I need it anyways. Forget the leg. I need the surgery. So I went forward with it, and I scheduled it. Instead of doing this whole Dan thing, what I do, where I schedule it like 3 months away so I can think about it for 90 days, I'm like, screw this. I'm like, what is the earliest I can get in? I am done with this stuff. I always want this to go, to happen. I coordinated with my sister and my mother and like the surgery and this and work and all this other stuff. And I kind of just made it all happen. And On July 9th, I got the surgery. And so here I am talking today. So obviously I got through it.
Yeah, I was shocked when you texted me and you were like, I'm having surgery in a week and a half. And again, I know how you operate because when we booked Prenuvo, you gave me the dates of our scans and it was 2 months out. And I was like, wow, they're really busy. And you said, no, I just need time to mentally prepare. So
yeah. And
it's a whole new you.
Yeah, this was, but this was like 4 or 5 years of just being annoyed. So what is this thing I mentioned called the ACDF? I had no idea. I'd never heard of this until I talked to these neurosurgeons. This is like a whole new world to me. It opened up so many different doors. So let me kind of define what that is and then walk you through why it's called that. And interestingly enough, such as with like anything maybe in life, when you need something and you start telling people you're doing this or you had done this, they also know someone or themselves have had it. And so it starts to become like, oh my God, like everyone knows what this is and no one's ever talking about, which kind of makes sense, but it's also very strange. It's a very strange thing to kind of take on. And so
it's underground.
Yeah. It's like underground, but it's like right in front of you. It's in plain sight. An ACDF stands for an anterior cervical discectomy and fusion. No wonder why they abbreviate this thing.
Sounds like ACDC to me. That's what I keep hearing you say, but okay.
No, for sure. And of course, everyone ACDCs this thing, but I'm ACDFing it. Anterior means the surgeon goes through the front of your neck rather than the back. So they make the incision in the front of your neck. Cervical refers to your neck, which is the top part of your spine. Discectomy means removing a damaged or worn out disc that is pressing on the nerves or the spinal cord. And then fusion means they replace that disc with a spacer or cage. It's often filled with a bone graft, I understand. And then there's a small titanium plate put in with screws. And then as the months proceed, those two bones grow together and they become one solid bone. And they use the titanium because now that titanium allows you to still do MRIs in the future. Because if they use metal, then you get an issue.
So now you're going to beep at the airport too.
I'm not going to beep. I don't think I beep with titanium. It's not metal.
I do. No, I have titanium in my hip and knee. I sure beep all the time.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. I do know that I can do MRIs, which is good. Because I love my MRIs. Not really.
The king of MRIs.
So how is this surgery actually performed? For those that have a visual memory, you might want to mute this. But the surgeon makes a small incision in the front of your neck. He gently moves the muscles, your windpipe, and your esophagus to the side, not cutting through them safely so we can get to the spine.
Pushes the esophagus to the side? Okay.
It's all pushed to the side, which is crazy to me.
What? I didn't know you had that option to move things around.
Neither did I.
Okay.
But if you think about it, it's like, I mean, although that's totally unsafe, meaning like if you have a bad surgeon and you have like your esophagus is being moved or something.
I want mine to be where it's supposed to be.
You could lose your voice permanently. Like so much can go wrong. But if you think about that, it's going through no major organ. So it's like, it's just crazy surgery, but it doesn't go through any, like all of your organs are like not untouched, even though these are, important things.
Move to the side. Okay.
Yeah. So they remove the damaged disc along with the bone spurs, osteophytes sites defined that are compressing on the spinal cord. And so I talked about that, how they put the spacer in. The goal of the surgery is to take pressure off the spinal cord and the nerves. Those structures are obviously being compressed. And I had my symptoms, which were slightly abnormal because there wasn't any pain or numbness. But I did have a difficulty walking, which we don't know if that was directly related to my neck. But Sandy and I mentioned this just before. There's this thing called I call it the 33% rule. And your doctor will say this if you ever, God forbid, have to go talk to a neurosurgeon, is that, and you're doing neck or anything on the spine, is that 33% of patients improve. 33% no, there's no further symptoms, so it prevents any further damage. And then 33% continue to get worse. And so...
And that's all spinal-related issues or yours specifically?
My understanding, it's anything to do with getting an ACDF or any spinal fusion.
Yes, I don't, as a forensic accountant, I don't love those numbers, but...
Who would?
Yeah, it's just not...
So like I'm sitting here and I knew this. And so this was definitely a piece of information that was in the assessment I was making as to whether I was going to do the surgery. But it kind of didn't matter because I was in a dangerous place. Sometimes you just have to like look at it and say, I'm in a dangerous place and I have a 66% chance this won't get worse. And so I'm going to go with that. I'm going to take that. And from my readings and I've done further readings, I think my chances are better because I think I'm younger. I think there's some things that are working for me. And so I'm going to kind of think about this, not just by what a surgeon says, but more about like how practically I could do here. So I went with it, obviously, but no one wants to, surgery should be like 90% chance or like whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I want it. Like when I have my hip and knee done, you kind of know what the outcome's going to be. And so nobody ever talked percentages with me. It was kind of like you'll have less pain when your hip is new. And that was my experience.
And so there's just like, oftentimes a couple people told me this garden hose analogy that didn't know each other. Like, so it stuck out because it was mentioned a couple times. Obviously it's like kind of the analogy that these surgeons or people in this world use. But imagine stepping on a garden hose, your spine. Water can still get through, but not very well, right? So like obviously the spinal cord is similar. And so if it's being squeezed, the spinal cord, the signals traveling from your brain to the rest of your body are not normal. They're being disrupted. And so when you fix a garden hose, sometimes if you have a garden hose and it's fixed, there's still a crease in it. It's still not like perfectly fixed.
Yeah, it's still there.
It's still like, it works, but like it's still there. And so that's the whole point with like this surgery is that you'll fix this, but your spine is your spine. The damage is already there. And so that's the part that kind of sucks. Like it gives you like bad vibes about it and it's worrisome. And so, that's the analogy they use. And that's kind of how that was kind of like the cherry on top. Let's just make sure this doesn't get worse because I want to, enjoy my life and be mobile.
Yeah. And you don't want something to happen out of a decision that you made. That's a difficult thing to live with. So
to kind of cap this off, I mentioned all the things that it was pretty obvious I needed this surgery. I had to check this box as the first box in this whole world of how, PT is next and there's other things I'm doing to make sure that I'm really capturing everything to make myself feel better here. I've done everything I could do. So decision was actually wound up, even though there's some concerning things here, being pretty easy for me, and hence I move forward. So that is ACDF.
So thanks so much for sharing an honest look at what led you to this decision. I think it's a really important consideration. And one of the biggest takeaways isn't that this was about rushing into surgery. It was about paying attention to your body when it changed, as you mentioned, educating yourself by getting multiple opinions, and making an informed decision. In our next episode, we'll take you inside the surgery itself. Dan will walk us through everything from medical clearance and surgery day to waking up from anesthesia to the first days of recovery and where he is today. If you found this episode helpful, we'd love your support. Please take a second to follow The Health Hunt on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss part 2. If you know someone dealing with neck pain, spinal issues, or even just facing a major medical decision, please share this episode with them. It could make a real difference. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a review. It's one of the best ways to help others discover the show. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Health Hunt.